Hi, Maria. I am so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
So, today's episode, I really kind of want to talk about like this transition that you've made over the past, year now from like kind of being in a
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. From being in a corporate job to leaving, starting your own practice,
Yeah.
on insurance, off insurance, all of the things,
Mhm.
and kind of where Instagram fit into that.
Yeah, totally. So I can introduce myself to
Yes.
start. I'm Maria. I'm a anxiety therapist in Wisconsin. I also do EMDR for my clients. So I specifically work with women with high functioning anxiety and trauma and help them heal through EMDR. A lot of the stuff that I also work with my clients is with corporate anxiety too, which I
Hmm.
came from a corporate environment working as a social worker, and so that is a huge thing that comes up with a lot of my clients too.
Cool. What was your like corporate job in social work? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I worked at a hospital after I graduated for a year. So I worked on an adult inpatient unit. I worked on adult child psych unit, and then I also worked in the ER. So I worked in
Awesome.
like the hospital corporate environment.
How was that for you?
Super stressful. Like my first job out of grad school, it was really stressful. As a lot of people experienced, I graduated in 2022, and so we're kind of still on the tail end of COVID
Yep.
and experiencing just really low staff at the hospital, and also just like not the greatest pay as well. And so it's
Hmm.
like fighting for higher pay and then also working a ton. And then being salaried and like not getting paid for the extra work that I was doing.
Totally. Did you know at that point when you kind of like started with the hospital job that you eventually wanted to go into private practice or
No,
yeah.
no, no. I actually remember seeing it's like this really vivid memory that I have because I had no clue how I was going to continue because I knew that what I was doing was not sustainable long term because I
Hmm.
was working. I mean, I picked up extra shifts in the ER and was doing that for some extra money. And I was working a ton and, not making that much money. And so I knew it wasn't sustainable long term.
Yep.
And so, but I remember seeing one of your reels when I was like in my office at the hospital, and that was a huge thing. Where it's like I really need to go back to that because my internship in grad school was an outpatient, but
Hmm.
I needed to find a way to make this sustainable because I actually was thinking about leaving the field altogether, like less than a year into my job, which is wild.
It is wild, but I think that that's something that like so many therapists I talk
Hmm.
to can relate to of
Hmm.
like we get into this field because we really want to help people, but then work these jobs where it's like just impossible to actually help people when you have a giant caseload, you can't take care of yourself financially, like there's all the bureaucracy of working in a nonprofit or a hospital. So I definitely don't think that you're alone in that, but it's such
No.
a shame because grad school is
Hmm.
also freaking expensive to be
Hmm.
like, I don't know if I wanted to do this after all. A year later is it sucks.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And like during that time, like 2022 to 2023, like student loans were on pause too. So I was not being able to sustain my income when I didn't have that extra like $400 to $500 payment per month. And so it definitely wasn't sustainable long term. And it sucks that that's the environment that, the system is in.
Yep. Out of curiosity, do you remember like what reel you saw or kind of what about it like stood out to you at that time?
I think it was one of your income reports. And
Yeah.
then I followed you, and then I was like, oh, wait, this is actually profitable.
Yep.
Because when I was, thinking about jobs after, like I was at a place where they wanted to pay people like $35 a session,
Yep.
and you would have to say like 40 clients a week. And so I knew that that wasn't profitable, and I didn't want to be in that many sessions a week. And
Yep.
so it was just like figuring out. I love to travel. I studied abroad. I traveled when I can. And I knew I wanted like that type of life, but I knew that like the systems and the jobs that I had so far was not going to sustain even a comfortable life. Like I wasn't making enough money to even pay my bills. And so how
Totally.
was I going to be able to do the things I actually enjoy that allow me to show up as a good therapist?
And so you see this reel that
Hmm.
kind of like sparks this question mark of like maybe
Hmm.
private practice and then what?
Hmm. And then I was still in training. So I could have gone out on my own, but I decided to learn some more through a group practice, and made that transition a year into working at the hospital, left the hospital, went to the group practice, and also learned a lot. And it was extremely, extremely stressful financially, and based on the billing system we had in place, and just like all these negative beliefs about like therapists, and that you can't charge a huge like premium rate,
Yeah.
and like you have to take insurance. And then I was seeing a bunch of like Medicaid people, and people were frequently like no showing or late canceling, and I couldn't make that money. And so I think I did the numbers, and I think I made like from June until May of this year, I think I made like $30,000 like the
Yeah.
whole year. It just like wasn't profitable at all. And yeah, I learned that. And then I was like, okay, now we're going to make the jump to my own private practice because I need to make this sustainable somehow.
Yeah. And so at that point, you were fully licensed or?
I got fully licensed February. And so right after I got fully licensed, I made the transition into starting all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's so interesting because I think that there's a saying of like, I'm going to totally screw this up, but like, you're the combination of like the 5 people you spend the most time with
Mhm,
or
mhm.
something.
Yeah.
And it's wild just seeing like different friends and therapists in their career, how big of an impact that makes on one way or the other, right? Of
Mhm.
like being in a group practice where you're taught, we have to take insurance, it's the right thing to do. Therapists can't charge a high rate. Social workers specifically for sure can't charge a high rate. And so you can really start to believe that if that is like your entire professional network. At what point did you kind of get on Instagram yourself versus just following like me or other therapists on Instagram?
Yeah, so I remember I purchased your PPA bundle like
Mm-hmm.
it was August 2023. It was like right before I went off to Thailand.
Yeah.
That's like the only reason I remember it. And then I remember you saying like, you just have to start, you just have to start. And
Yep.
so I made my Instagram, I think it was October 2023, and just started posting really generally. I had no clue what my niche was because at the group practice, I was seeing everybody and anybody. And so I
Yeah.
really had to figure out what that was going to be. I actually went through like my old ones the other day, and I
Did
was
you?
like, yeah, and it was incredible how much progress I've made. But like started like posting consistently on that late in 2023, and then really found my niche when I went to my own private practice, which I started seeing clients in March on my own, like from the group practice that I was allowed to take. And then
Yeah.
eventually, like, fully went on my own end of May last year, or
Cool.
this year, I mean. Yeah.
So there was kind of like some transition period where you did a little bit of group practice and a little bit of solo.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was like a 3-month period that I did both at the same time.
Yeah. I did that too. I feel like it's just helpful of like not, I did that with getting off the group practice, leaving my full-time job and getting off of insurance. Of I think just having like little pieces change at a time versus having to rip the whole band-aid off because that just causes like so much instability with your income.
Yeah, I totally agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree. So,
Cool. So you start your group practice or you start your private practice and leave the group practice. What is that like for you to kind of like open your own business, go out on your own and start seeing clients independently?
yeah, it was a huge change, right? Like I was working really independently at the group practice because I was telehealth. They had an office, but I just worked telehealth because I wasn't near the office. But after I quit the group practice where we took insurance, I was fully anticipating taking insurance on my own,
Yep.
just to be able. I mean, it was such like a mindset belief of I have to take insurance. Like you were just saying, the 5 people you surround yourself with, like
Yep.
all I kept hearing was you have to take insurance. Nobody's going to pay you if you don't take insurance. And I tried to get a network with 2 insurances on my own, and they both denied me.
Oh,
One for
well.
being a telehealth provider, and then one just they didn't give a reason, and they just said they don't need any more people in network when I had clients with those specific insurances.
Oh my gosh.
And then I found, and then, I think it was like 6 or 7, maybe 8 clients that had those insurances, and they still stuck with me, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
if after I got denied, they continued on with me. And so Income wise, I decided to do Alma and private pay at the same time. Just financially, I didn't, as I was saying before, I didn't make much money at that group practice. And so
Yeah.
I wasn't able to like save a ton before I went into private practice. And so it was a lot of like mindset shifts that I had to do to realize that like I am worth that rate and people will pay that rate. And it's okay to have a combination of both to start. And then
Yep.
eventually the long term goal is to be 100% private pay.
Do you mind me asking what you got paid via Alma versus like your private pay rate when you were kind of on your own?
Yeah, so I think well, actually I'm still with Alma, so I'm not sure if this
Okay.
is something I should share, but
I'll
okay.
re-ask the question.
Okay.
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 Do you mind me asking what your private pay rate is and maybe just like generally how that compares to what you were getting paid at Alma?
Yeah, totally. So I have my private pay rate is 175 per 45-minute session. And
Awesome.
then I do intensives too. So I have some packages available. And I do a 90-minute session for 275, and the EMDR intensives are 250 an hour. So,
Awesome.
which is, I mean, double what I was making before, like with group practice and like on my own, I
Yeah.
am making like double what I made before.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then what was that like for you to kind of take those existing clients and tell them? I assume some of them you were able to see their insurance through Alma, but some of them, did you have to go private pay with them or how did that work?
Yeah, so those clients I took with me, it was from the group practice. There were like more local insurances that they
Gotcha.
had, and then they kept with me to my own private practice. I, again, like even before I left the group practice, I didn't think people would pay the 175, 250, 275, and
Yep.
they all, like all of them did, right? Like the people that were my ideal clients, they 100% stuck with me because they saw the progress we were making in therapy, and people are willing to pay if they are making that progress in therapy.
And I think that that's huge too. Like, I just want to slow down and really name that again for people,
Mm-hmm.
because especially since you live in Wisconsin, because I hear from therapists all the time if they don't live in New York or California, basically they're like, this won't work for me, right? This is just for those people who live in like those really, really high income states where therapy is like super trendy, very popular kind of thing. And, I work with therapists all the time who are all over the country, right? I don't think of Wisconsin as like a particularly
No.
whatever, like bustling, high income, like Wall Street type of area. And yet you're able to have a caseload of people who are willing to pay you like a really good premium rate at 175 or even higher for those intensives and like that even further specialized service.
Yeah, totally. And I think the other thing that people often forget is that just because you're using your insurance doesn't mean it's affordable for people,
Yeah.
right? Like I've had people that have had $10,000 deductibles, so they're paying close to my private pay rate when they're using their insurance. And so
Yeah.
I think reminding myself, and I've seen that just through clients I've taken through Alma, where they just can't afford the full session fee, and that's going to
Yeah.
be the same, right? Like you're always going to have people that can't afford your fee, but a lot of people are going to be able to afford it, and that also gives you the ability to live the life that you want and not see so many people. Like when I was working at the group practice and I made like 30K a year, I was seeing 20 to 25 people a week, and it
Yep.
still didn't like equate to much at all.
Yeah. What do you consider to be like full now for your caseload?
Yeah, right now I'm seeing about 20 clients a week, which
Awesome.
I would love to, because I'm still like insurance and private pay. I would love to reduce that even more, but to 15. I think anywhere from 15 to 20 would be a great number for me.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely not the 25 to 30 that I was seeing before. It's way too much.
Totally. So, how did you kind of start to fill your caseload and get those 20 clients who wanted to work with you?
Yeah, so a lot of it was Instagram. A lot of my referrals come through Instagram now. And so that's really cool to see that work pay
Hmm.
off because I have put in the work over the past year or so to be able to get a lot of people coming from Instagram.
Yep.
Also Psychology Today, and then also just like referrals in the area that they can, yeah, like other people that I know that I have a niche that's different than what they're doing, and
Yep.
so that's mainly where it's coming from. And then, yeah, yeah, and then kind of working on the other stuff, right? Like right now I'm working on Google Ads and wanting to invest more in there as well. So just trying to build it out slowly by slowly. But I also remember that, I've only been at this for like 6 months now or 7 months now. So I'm like, you just gotta, like, I'm an anxious overachiever, so I want to do everything, but it's
Yeah.
been a lot of progress. And I've been so happy with like reflecting back at the end of the year of how far I've come.
Yeah. It's pretty wild to think about that, like, in 6 months, you can have made this much progress already. Do you mind sharing with folks where your income's been at since going out on your own, or?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So the first couple of months were a little bit slow for me. I didn't really, I guess it wasn't my intention to pick like the summer slump, but I
Yeah.
ran into the summer slump, and in August I was like, oh crap, like what's going on? And then mid-August, or like a couple weeks into August, I filled up like almost all the way. And so from September until now, I've been making anywhere from like 9K to 12K a month currently.
Amazing.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
so cool.
yeah, yeah.
And just so folks know, we're recording this in December. So that's like
Mhm,
3 months in a row of kind of those
mhm.
9, 10K months, which is so, so cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's really amazing. I never, working, at the hospital and then also working in the group practice, I never thought I was going to see months like this because I never did. And so it's really cool to see that you can go out and do this on your own and really be profitable.
Yeah, you're 100% going to have like a 6-figure year in 2025, which is
Mhm.
so cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm gonna end like from May to now, like 60 grand. So that's like
Yeah.
really awesome given that like summer was really slow. So I'm really, really happy and excited for the next year and being able to do that because I am still seeing insurance clients right now. So when I'm able to like fully transition off of that, it's going to be at a much better spot.
Yeah. With the Instagram piece, do you know how many followers you're at now, or?
I think I'm at 2,100.
Okay. So like a decent size, but not huge.
Correct.
How has that process been for you with like growing your audience?
Yeah, it's been challenging and rewarding, right? Like I think the challenging part came a lot at the beginning. I
Yeah.
did not, I mean, I grew up with social media. I'm a Gen Z girly, right? Like, but I didn't know how to use a platform like that for my business. And
Yeah.
so I think it's been a lot of growing and changing things and figuring out what works. But now it's been really cool because I've been able to outsource a lot of my social media stuff. So I have your Reels membership. I got a
Yeah.
VA, just kind of making all of these changes. And so it's really cool to see the work pay off and get there. And obviously hoping to grow that even more. But it's been so cool to see that I've gotten to this point, especially since I didn't really figure out like what my niche exactly was until
Yeah.
like May. So when I went out on my own.
Do you remember what your follower count was at when you got your first client from Instagram, or?
I think I know I was under 1,000.
Yeah.
But I think maybe right around that point. But I also hadn't advertised, like I was just trying to grow it
Yeah.
because I didn't know what that was going to look like with, working at the group practice and taking insurance. So I didn't really advertise it maybe until like right after the new year. So earlier this year, January
Yeah.
2024.
Cool.
Yeah.
How was that for you to kind of be in this stage where you were like growing, but not sure what the point was and not getting clients? I feel like that can be like a complicated time for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was a super complicated time. It was just trying to figure out logistics and figuring out how I do this, given that I'm still working at this place and just trying to finish that period of pre licensure. But I always had the end goal in mind that I want to own my own private practice, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think looking at people, and I was in PPA at the time. And so it was really cool to be able to connect with other therapists that were already doing it. And so
Yeah.
I always had that motivation to reference. And yeah, it was hard, but the end goal was always in sight. And if anything, I'm an anxious overachiever. And so I knew that it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time.
Is there anything that you've done that you think has been particularly helpful in actually like converting therapy clients from that following of like 2,000 people?
I think getting really, really specific. So in general, like when I was looking back at my old post, I was so general that I'm like, nobody's gonna feel seen by this post at
Yeah.
all, right? And so really making it as specific as you can. I think, being somebody, I always say that like I'm my like most ideal therapy client because
Yeah.
what I struggle with is what I help all the women that I work with. And so really just kind of thinking about what would I want to see online and
Yep.
making it so, so specific to what I would resonate with, I think is honestly the most important thing, because there are so many creators out there. And so unless you're specific, you really aren't going to stand out.
Totally. Yeah, I'm definitely my own favorite client as well. But
Mhm.
I think that it makes it so easy and simple,
Mhm.
right? To like be specific. Sometimes it's hard because you have to like dig a little bit deeper and think about, how would I really say this? How do I really feel about it? What's actually like challenging here? But it's like you have a built-in focus group inside of your head.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
being able to actually tap into that and get really specific, I think is so, so important.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, it's been just so helpful to be able, because a lot of people will come to my profile and be like, that is me, right? Like
Yep,
that's me. And that's what usually gets them on these intro calls, especially like when you are private pay, you just have to be way more specific than if you're taking insurance. Like you have to be a kind of person that people want to go out of network for and want to pay that fee. And
totally.
so they really do need to feel seen and heard. And so I think really, when you have a content idea, even going further than that and like, how can I make this even more specific?
Yep. How about the networking piece? You mentioned getting like referrals from your colleagues. Did you know a lot of people in private practice when you kind of first started, or?
No, not at all. So I've been networking with doctors and just people in the area. Even, I've gotten referrals from people that I don't even know, like I haven't
Yeah.
even networked with. And so that's been really cool that, whether it's an online presence or they come across my website, I'm not really sure, but I will get these like random referrals from people I don't even know. Like they'll just be like, "Oh, my therapist referred me to you." I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's really cool. That's awesome." But so I think, I built out a really great website. And so I think that's been performing. And then also just, going to networking events. I went to a networking event in Milwaukee a couple months ago, and just going to those type of things and introducing yourself and putting yourself out there, I think is what makes a difference with networking.
Yeah. Are you somebody with social anxiety at all, or what is it like for you to kind
Totally.
of put yourself into
Totally.
those situations?
Totally. Yeah, it's not very comfortable. It's been like a new thing. I think a lot of things we don't learn in grad school, networking is one of them, right? We
Yep.
don't talk about how to have those conversations. But, I just think about when I go to those events, like it's really helpful to fill my caseload, right? Like that's why I'm
Yep.
there, is to be able to fill my caseload. And one thing that I always go back to is like this quote or idea is that, like, if people don't know your services are out there, that actually is a drawback, right? Like
Yep.
if people don't know you can help, that you can help them, then you won't ever fill your caseload, right? And so I
Yep.
think just like putting yourself out there, like slowly with people that you know to begin, or connecting, having your therapist connect you to another person in the community, and then just starting conversations there. I think slowly but surely you feel more comfortable. But yeah, it's not easy with social anxiety, and it's but yeah, everybody's so nice, and I think it's definitely worth it in the long run.
Yeah. And I think too, like, it's just part of doing business, right? Is like we have
Hmm.
to do things that are uncomfortable. And that's going to be the case with any job or any career, right? And so, like, maybe at the hospital, you were uncomfortable financially. Maybe you were uncomfortable with long hours. Maybe you were uncomfortable with clients. You didn't feel like you had the capacity to help or whatever, right? And so, like, in private practice, that discomfort might look a little bit different. It might look like having to put yourself out there and network, or having to hire a virtual assistant or fire a virtual
Hmm.
assistant, or
Yeah.
delegate or give tough feedback or whatever. And so I think that it's just so helpful to be real about, like, not everything is going to be sunshines and roses and like amazing with having a private practice. But if that trade off feels worth it to you, right? Like,
Hmm.
amazing, go out there and network and get private pay clients. If it doesn't,
Totally.
maybe you don't have to do so much marketing and you can see clients and network with insurance, but you're going to get paid a
Hmm.
lot less and see a lot more people.
Totally.
And so I think just like kind of being aware of those choices and deciding what path works best for you is so important.
Totally. And I always come back to this idea too, that if it were easy, we would have a full United States with private pay therapists, right?
Yep.
And so it's not going to be easy to put yourself out there, but the reward is definitely worth the risk. and it gets easier and easier every time you do it. I can't even imagine where I'm going to be next year, like in May or
Yeah.
even at the end of the year, where, with how much progress I've made so far. And it's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And you just become more and more comfortable. But the hardest part is just starting, right? Like starting your Instagram page or starting to go to networking events or starting to get private pay clients. It's that starting is the most challenging part. And then after that, it just gets a little bit easier and easier every time.
Yep. Talk to me about like, I guess the hours. I'm curious what that's been like for you in terms of hard work, because I know that there's obviously more hustle in the beginning, but
Mm-hmm.
has it sort of like costed you work-life balance, or what has that been like?
Yeah. So I don't think I've talked about this at all, but I will
Yep.
talk about it here because
Yay.
why not? Why not? But I've been going through some health issues, just like with gut issues
Yep.
this year. And so there was a period probably of like 5 or 6 months really until like last month that I like wasn't feeling good at all. I had no
Yep.
energy. And so I haven't been as consistent as I've wanted to be. I just kind of have done my therapy clients, like
Yep.
posted a few times a week, and then just done whatever I had to do. And so I'm excited now that I'm like feeling better and in a better position to be able to prioritize that. But for a while, it really didn't feel like I had much energy or work life
Yep.
balance at all because of like health issues I've been dealing with. But prior to that, like with my private practice, and even when I'm working at the group practice, I prioritize work life balance so much. Like I
Hmm.
said, I love traveling, I love being outside. And so I usually take a decent amount of vacations,
Yep.
even if I am not making as much as I would want to. And so I'm excited to get back to that in the new year and
Yep.
really prioritize that. Another huge change that I had to do is really adjusting my hours and figuring out what was going to work for me because
Yep.
I offered like later evening hours because I'm like, oh, clients really need that, right? Like they can't come to therapy during the day. But that has been a huge mindset shift that I've had to make where I'm like, nope, I'm going to work 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and they'll be able to fit within those hours. And if not, like there's another therapist out there that can be their therapist that fits with that.
Totally. Have you made that change already, or is that sort of like in the works for the new year?
No, I already made that change. So it was just last month that I did it. But
Yeah.
since then, it's been amazing. Like, I feel like it's so early. I get done at 5 p.m. and it's
Yep.
amazing because then I can just like, I love to like move my body and go work out or like go get dinner or something. And then I can just relax and enjoy the rest of the night as I should, right? Like, therapists
Yep.
shouldn't be working all of this time because then you can't really show up for your clients the next day.
Totally. How was that received by your clients?
Totally fine. They're
Yeah.
like, yes, you have to prioritize your work life balance. I'm like, why didn't I do this earlier? So yeah, the clients, I mean, I feel so lucky with the clients and women that I work with because they are so amazing. Like they are such
Yep.
amazing humans. And so it's really nice to see how understanding they've been about this. And guess what? They figured out a time that they could make it between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Yep. Yeah, I had a similar experience because when I was full time in my practice or full time at another job and working at my private practice, all of my clients were in the evening. And then I went full time in my practice and was like, I don't want to be working, from 5 to
Mm-hmm.
8 p.m. anymore. This is wild.
Yeah.
And so I told them, and, for the most part, everybody was able to make it work. I was intentional of like, I told the teachers on my caseload first and the teenagers on my caseload first because I wanted to give them like those 3, 4 o'clock appointments.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody else, it's like virtual 1 hour per week. Like, I think most people really can easily find the time. And it makes such a difference for you as a therapist who's like doing all
Mm-hmm.
of these sessions, right?
Yeah, yeah, I do. And I feel like it just allows me to prioritize my work life balance. And
Yeah.
I have also made the decision that I work Monday through Thursday so that I have
Yay.
Friday off too. And so changing those things in my schedule, because I used to work so much, like I was working like 6 days a week or 5 days a week and working like 10-hour days on those days. And so it's been a huge change. And I've noticed I'm a much better therapist when I'm
Yep.
well rested and I'm taking care of myself and I'm being kind to like my mind and body versus when I'm just a burnt out therapist that is just trying to like make ends meet so that she can afford her bills.
Yep. And it's so hard because, like, obviously at some point you do have to do that, right? Like,
Mhm.
you have to take care of your finances in order to even think about, like, how am I taking care of my mental health or my physical health? If there's not like that financial safety, it's so challenging. And like, how can you be a therapist who's helping like burnt out
Mhm.
corporate anxious girlies and be like, yeah, I'm working 60 hours a
Mhm.
week. I'm working until 8 p.m. every day. It's just, it's so hard.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It
Yep.
like I've learned that it doesn't work, right? Like you can't be a good therapist. And another thing that I love to do is I love just educating myself, right? I love reading, I love listening to podcasts, and you do not have the mental energy or capacity to be able to do that and become a better therapist if you are just constantly working and constantly doing, 30 client sessions, 35 client sessions a week or working until, 7, 8 p.m.
Yep. What were the biggest mindset shifts that you had to sort of work through to get to this point in private practice?
Yeah, a lot of them, a lot of them. So, things that I've always heard, right, is one thing that I heard a lot when I was working in the hospital was private practice was going away. People won't pay your fee. There's no, like, people are going to want to work in the hospital again, or, yeah, that's just like way, way too much money. Nobody's ever going to pay you. I
Yep.
even, like, when I was at the group practice, they would want us to reduce our like if somebody was charged through insurance too much, they would want us to reduce it to our out of network like fee,
Mhm.
right? Private pay fee, which was like $100. And
Yep.
so it was a huge jump to go from like $100 to my fee of like 175, but I knew that I was
Totally.
worth that time, right?
Yep.
And so it's just been, I think a lot of it has just been like seeing these things over and over where people are going to pay your fee and that people are constantly wanting to go to therapy, right? Like therapy is so popular among young
Yep.
people as it should be. And there are so many clients out there for you to see. I think one thing that I like stuck out to me that you had mentioned is that like if you want to see 20 clients a week, maybe that's like having 40 clients in your state, right?
Yep.
Like there are like 600,000 people in Milwaukee alone. And so it's really not that challenging to be able to find 40 people that would want to pay your fee. And
Yep.
so it really is not as difficult as people make it out to be. But I think over time, I realize I'm worth that fee. I realize I don't have to work weekends or nights. And that's what makes me a good therapist. And I can't show up for my clients if I'm not showing up for myself.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to therapists that are maybe in a similar position, working at a full-time job that they don't like or aren't being paid well, and are thinking about going into private practice?
Yeah, I think it's completely 100% doable, right? Like whether you want to transition slowly or you want to transition all at once, it's 100% doable to do it. And I think remembering that you are worth whatever fee that you're going to charge and really aiming high for your fee and then, slowly stepping away from that job or even if you need to take insurance for a little bit while manage private pay and like transition to private pay, that's the road that I went on and it is
Yeah,
completely feasible. I mean, I'm making good money while still taking insurance. And so there are so many paths forward and there's like no right one to do, but it's just going to be whatever one you feel like is the best route for you. But you 100% can definitely do that and you do not have to work in an environment that you hate.
amazing. Well, Maria, where can folks find you on Instagram if they want to follow along or chat or check out your page for some inspiration because you are killing it?
Thank you. Thank you. I am Mental Health by Maria on Instagram and TikTok. So if you want to follow along, definitely find me there or my
Um,
website too. Yeah.
is your website mentalhealthbymaria.com?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Maria. I appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.